Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Thought I was done doing some immediate reaction to the Saturday slate of college football. Headed into new Fox Sports Radio. For people who don't know, I'm on from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern every Saturday, reacting to the entire day of college football. So I try to do some of the reactions for the YouTube channel during the day on Saturday. Thought I was done after Texas, Michigan, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, whatever. But there was just a result that I feel like it is my obligation to talk about for at least a few minutes here, as a game that I was just completely wrong on. South Carolina at Kentucky. I picked Kentucky to win. Thought it wasn't going to be close. It wasn't close, but not the way that I or many others envisioned it going. South Carolina goes into Kroger Field. They kick the you-know-what out of Kentucky. I was just going to say crap for the record. I wasn't going to say anything vulgar, but kick the crap out of Kentucky. 31-6 is the final score. Kentucky finishes with under 200 yards of total offense. This is embarrassing, and this directly falls on Mark Stoops. When I look at this game, couple things. First of all, I'll own it. I was dead wrong on this. On our Wednesday preview show, I said, I don't think Kentucky's perfect, but they'll take care of business against South Carolina. They'll be fine. They'll be good to go. Yeah, that's not what happened at all. And by the way, don't tell me this is like some big statement about South Carolina. South Carolina, I'm sorry, is not a good football team. They were picked to finish, 14th in the SEC, 13th in the SEC. But this is also a team that should have and could have lost to Old Dominion at home to open their season. Go back and watch that ODU game, okay? South Carolina got outgained by Old Dominion at home. South Carolina had less than 300 yards of total offense, and if it wasn't for 4 ODU turnovers, ODU probably goes into South Carolina and ends up winning that game. And so this isn't an indictment. I don't think this means that South Carolina is way better than we thought they were and they're going to, finish 9-3. I think it just means that Kentucky is that bad, and this continues just some themes that we see year over year over year over year with Mark Stoops and his team. And frankly, I understand the frustration from Kentucky fans. First off, team just looked not ready to play. You look at how this game started out. It was only 10-6 at half, but think about everything that went wrong and the manner in which it went wrong. First off, penalties. Inexcusable. Penalties are just so inexcusable. I don't care if it's week 2. I know there's no preseason. 11 penalties in this game for Kentucky. That is simply not acceptable. If you lose because the other team is better, if you lose because the other team has better players, if you lose because you're in a weird road environment, but to have 11 penalties at home against one of the worst teams in the SEC, not excusable. Beyond that, I'll say this, and I don't blame these two players individually, but I am done trying to convince myself that a new coordinator and a new quarterback are going to change things at Kentucky. I'm not blaming Brock Vandagriff. It's not all his fault, although he did throw a pick 6. But 3 of 10 passing, a lot of that falls on the O-line. A lot of that falls on the fact that the O-line just simply did not block well enough, did not give him time in the pocket. The new offensive coordinator, I was sold on how things are going to be different. They aren't different, just like they weren't different last year with Liam Cohen and Devin Leary, just like they weren't the year before. It wasn't, Rich Scagnarello was terrible. Okay, I get it, all of that. But at some point, again, it doesn't fall on who the OC is. It falls on who the head coach is. And so to me, this is all about Mark Stoops, okay? And a couple thoughts on Mark Stoops. Listen, we can have the honest conversation about Mark Stoops. He's the best coach that Kentucky has ever had in my life, but it sort of feels like this thing right now has kind of sort of run its course, okay? This is a guy that is now the longest tenured head coach in the SEC. And like I said, time and time and time again, year over year over year over year, it just feels like it is the same song, different dance, and it never seems to fundamentally change. Like I said, we are now what? Kentucky fans, correct me if I'm wrong. 4 offensive coordinators in the last 4 years. Liam Cohen, 2 separate stints. But I just bring it up because I was told that it was the offensive coordinator this year and it was this last year. And by the way, Devin Leary was a disappointment last year. And I'm not putting it all on Mark Stoops, but at the end of the day, you can't have 4 different offensive coordinators, 3 different coordinators in 3 years. The offense stinks and it's always on the guy calling the plays. The guy calling the plays can only put together a game plan based on what the head coach wants. I think Stoops is, lacking creativity as a head coach, lacking creativity on the offensive side of the football, still trying to win games ugly. And it's the same song and dance over and over again. Why I have less sympathy for Mark Stoops than ever before, again, noting that he is the best head coach in Kentucky in my lifetime, at Kentucky in my lifetime, is the fact that this guy, first of all, makes $8.6 million a year, which is insane, but 2, has been given everything he needs to succeed, and as we talked about in the offseason, doesn't stop complaining about it. Remember, this offseason, he went on a completely random, it wasn't at media days, it was in a standalone interview, a completely random, tangent and complaining tangent about NIL and, I have to spend so much time focused on NIL and I don't even get to coach my football team. Well, a couple thoughts. 1, you get paid $8.6 million. This is part of the deal now. It's part of the deal for everyone from Ryan Day and Steve Sarkisian and Kirby Smart all the way down to guys at the FCS, whatever level. This is part of the deal. I don't want to hear excuses. 2, even if you spend more, maybe you do need to spend more time preparing your team because they're just not ready to go. But it's just over and over again the same thing. And I have less sympathy because it's not just that you lost to South Carolina for a 3rd straight year. It's that over the course of the offseason, it's blame everything else. It's NIL. We don't have enough time. I don't want to speak for any fan base, but I don't think fans want to hear that. It's part of the job. You have to do it. And oh, by the way, when fans are giving their hard-earned money, every school, they don't want to hear excuses when your guys don't come out ready to play. Again, it's one thing if you do lose to Georgia, and, you're playing them in a week from now. If you do lose to Georgia and they just have better players than you. But when you're paying all this money for this roster and you're seeing results like that, not only that you lost, you got boat raced, you got your butt kicked at home on top of the fact that your team was unprepared and not ready to go, that falls on you. And so I'll be curious what the next, phase is for Kentucky. Listen. But there 2 things can be true, okay? Obviously, from Mark Stoops' perspective, he's got a job for as long as he wants it, okay? But I bring it up because this was the first time I felt like Kentucky fans were really, really, really angry in the midst of this game for a lot of the reasons that I just said. And beyond that, and here's the important part that I think is worth noting, is that beyond that, here's the other thing, is this comes one off season after Mark Stoops tried to get the Texas A&M job, And what I would say, I go back to that moment in time. And what I think, and this is one thing I guess I'll pseudo defend Mark Stoops on. I think he kind of knew I think he felt like he hit a ceiling at Kentucky, that it wouldn't get much better than it had been. Last year, obviously you're 7-5, but you at least beat Louisville that final day of the regular season. And I think he knew we're going to an SEC without divisions. We're not going to get some of the teams on our schedule that we've had year in and year out. Although this year, South Carolina is supposed to be a win and it isn't. You do get Vanderbilt at least, but I think he realized the SEC is getting tougher. I've done everything I can, and maybe it is just time for me to move on. And so first off, Texas A&M fans, they got to be, I know it wasn't perfect against Notre Dame last week, but they got to be at least a little bit happy that, hey, worked out for the best that he's not here. But it just feels like, has this Mark Stoops Kentucky thing run its course? I don't know that it's going to get better. I understand the frustration of Kentucky fans. And again, how can you not be frustrated against an SEC rival at home that early in Mark Stoops' tenure you had a lot of successes against? You have under 200 yards of total offense, 30 yards of passing offense. It's just really, really, really bad. So I will have more on this on the Aaron Torres pod. Sunday night we'll be back at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but it is a crushing loss. Kentucky fans, you have every right to deserve to be frustrated. You have every right to be frustrated with what you just saw. Again, we're all fans of somebody. You pay your hard-earned money for tickets, for parking, for NIL now, and you got a complete no-show from your coach and your players. By the way, as always, subscribe to our Torres on UK page, where we're talking all Kentucky all the time, and there will be a lot to react to in the post game. Be back Sunday night